Lone trucker finds a nurse running from danger. Then he turns the truck around. Imagine driving alone on a stormy night, haunted by memories you can't escape. That's exactly where Jack Turner was. A man running from his past until he spotted a desperate figure on the roadside. A nurse soaked and barefoot, fleeing something terrifying. What happens next changes both their lives forever. This isn't just a story about survival. It's a story about courage, redemption, and the power of standing up when everything is at stake. Jack's lonely road suddenly becomes a mission to protect someone whose life depends on him. But danger lurks close, and the choices they make will test their limits in ways neither expected. Stay with us as we unfold this gripping tale of trust and bravery, where one man's decision to turn around might just save them both. If you love stories that keep you on the edge of your seat, don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. Your support helps us bring more incredible stories like this. Now let's dive in. The rain had been falling for hours, turning the old highway into a mirror of grey and orange reflections under Jack Turner's truck lights. The rhythmic hum of tires against wet asphalt was the only sound in his lonely world, a world he'd built to escape memories that hurt too much to face. Jack wasn't driving toward anything. He was just driving away. His rig, a worn red Peterbilt, was cleaner than most, almost as if caring for it filled the silence left by a life that used to matter. He gripped the steering wheel as thunder rolled across the sky, and the wipers fought a losing battle against the sheets of rain. A shape emerged from the shadows up ahead. Jack squinted. Just past a broken guardrail, a lone figure stood by the roadside, drenched, trembling, and barely visible through the storm. As he got closer, the shape took form. A woman. No umbrella, no shoes. Her hair was soaked and she clutched something to her chest. Jack slowed instinctively. Something in her posture felt off. Not just someone waiting, someone hiding. His hand hovered over the brake as lightning flashed, illuminating the unmistakable outline of medical scrubs. A nurse. Out here. He pulled. To a slow stop, the engine grumbling as he leaned toward the window. "You all right, ma'am?" he called out, voice raised to compete with the storm. She didn't respond, just stared at him like she was calculating whether his truck meant safety or danger. Jack rolled down the window further, the rain slapping in sideways. Her eyes were wide, filled with fear, but also determination. She wasn't lost. She was on the run. And still she didn't speak. She just looked at him like she needed help but wasn't sure if she was allowed to accept it. "You need a ride," he tried again. His words were gentle but firm, the same tone he used with jumpy dogs at roadside diners. She hesitated. Then, with a slow, almost robotic motion, she nodded. Jack got out and walked around the truck, opening the passenger door. The woman climbed in without saying a word, dripping rainwater onto the rubber mat. She kept her arms crossed, the soaked fabric of her uniform clinging to her like a second skin. Jack closed the door and got back in, glancing at her sideways. "Name's Jack," he offered. Still nothing. They drove in silence for miles. Jack glanced at her from time to time, noting the way she flinched at every passing headlight. He turned down the radio, sensing that music might be too much. Her bare feet were tucked under her on the seat, bruised and dirty. Her ID badge was missing. The only clue to her identity was the red cross patch on her chest. Jack thought about his wife, also a nurse, also someone who didn't flinch easily. Something bad had happened. He just didn't know what yet, and she wasn't ready to say. Eventually, Jack tried again. "You running from someone?" The question sat heavy in the cab. For a second, he thought she'd ignore him again. Then, barely above a whisper, she said, "They killed her." Jack's stomach dropped. That was it. No name, no explanation. Just 3 words that opened a door he wasn't sure he wanted to walk through. He kept his eyes on the road, but now his mind was racing. Was she involved in something criminal? Or was she a victim caught in a web too dangerous to name? He didn't know, but she'd spoken, and that changed everything. Suddenly, a police cruiser passed them going the other way. In an instant, she ducked low in the seat, breathing heavily, clutching the dashboard. Jack's instincts kicked in. He kept driving, didn't react, but inside alarms were going off. She wasn't just afraid of bad people. She was afraid of the law. That raised more questions than it answered. Jack glanced in the rearview mirror, watching the cruiser fade into the mist behind them. What had he just gotten himself into? He pulled into a rest area a few miles ahead, trying to buy some time and think. "I'll grab some coffee. You want anything?" he asked. She shook her head, still curled into herself. Jack stepped out into the rain, his boots splashing into a shallow puddle. The cold bit into him, but not as sharply as the feeling in his gut. Something wasn't right. He didn't know who she was. He didn't know what she'd seen. But his conscience whispered what his heart already knew. Turning back wasn't an option anymore. As he sipped from the coffee machine inside the tiny rest stop, Jack looked out at his truck. The woman hadn't moved, still there, still watching, and he realized for the first time in years he felt something stirring beneath the grief and routine. Responsibility. Not duty, not obligation, but something deeper. A pull to protect. Maybe it was his wife's memory echoing in his chest. Maybe it was the rain washing away excuses. But one thing was clear. Whoever she was, she wouldn't be alone anymore. Jack drove through the winding road as the rain softened into a mist, but the tension inside the truck only grew heavier. The woman, Elena, as he soon learned when he glimpsed her stitched name on the uniform, hadn't said another word. Her arms were tightly crossed, body curled toward the window, eyes darting like prey, expecting the predator's return. Jack wanted to ask questions, but something in her stillness warned him. Push too hard and she might bolt. He knew that kind of fear. It doesn't scream, it holds its breath. At a red light in a small town, Elena suddenly sank lower in her seat. Her hand pressed against the dashboard, her chest rising and falling faster. Jack followed her gaze. A police cruiser sat across the intersection. Its lights weren't on, the engine idling casually, but to Elena it was a loaded gun. "You okay?" Jack asked quietly, but she just shook her head, barely moving. When the light turned green, Jack kept his eyes forward and slowly drove past, pretending not to notice her panic. But his grip on the wheel tightened. That wasn't fear of justice, it was fear of being found. Minutes later, Eleanor finally spoke again, her voice cracked like dry wood. "I can't go back." Jack didn't press her to explain. He sensed that every word was a risk for her. Instead, he just nodded, like he understood something she didn't need to say out loud. The truck's cabin held an unspoken agreement. He wouldn't ask and she wouldn't lie. But even without details, her fear was contagious. Jack began checking his mirrors more often, noticing vehicles that might have been following longer than expected. He didn't believe in coincidences. Not anymore. At the next fuel station, Jack pulled in. "Stretch your legs," he offered, stepping down. Eleanor hesitated, then slowly got out. She walked around the truck like someone who hadn't felt solid. Ground in days. Jack went inside to pay and grab snacks. When he returned, she was gone. His heart spiked. He looked around. The pumps, the bathrooms, the shadows near the vending machines. Nothing. Panic rose in his throat. Had she run? Had someone taken her? Then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw her crouching behind a parked SUV, eyes locked, on a man getting out of a black car nearby. Jack approached slowly. "Hey," he said gently. "It's okay, he's just getting gas." Eleanor didn't look away. "That's one of them," she whispered. Her voice wasn't fearful. It was hollow, like someone who's seen too much to panic anymore. Jack didn't ask for proof. He saw the way she froze, the way her body prepared for flight. That wasn't paranoia, that was survival. "Get back in the truck," he said firmly. "Now." She obeyed without hesitation, and Jack returned a minute later, his mind racing with scenarios he never imagined would touch his life. Back on the road, Elena finally opened up. "They followed me out of the hospital. I thought I lost them." Her voice was barely audible. Jack didn't interrupt. "My friend, she was going to report them. They found out." She looked down. "I found her in the supply room." Jack swallowed hard. He couldn't look at her. Not yet. He knew that tone. He'd heard it in his Wife stories from the ER. People breaking, people dying. But this wasn't just a tragedy, it was a trap someone didn't escape from. Helena had. So what now? Jack asked. It wasn't rhetorical. He truly didn't know. He wasn't the kind of guy who got involved. He was just a trucker, damn it. But now there was blood in the story, danger in the passenger seat, and a name stitched into scrubs that refused to be forgotten. Eleanor didn't answer. She was staring ahead, eyes fixed on the endless road like it was a lifeline. Jack realized she hadn't planned this far. She had run, but she had nowhere left to run to. And now, she was his responsibility. Whether he liked it or not, a car appeared in the rearview mirror. Same model, same color. It had been behind them for miles. Jack took a turn he hadn't planned on, an old service road, and checked the mirror again. The car followed. Elena noticed. Her hand gripped the edge of her seat, and Jack didn't need her to say anything. "Hang on," he muttered, accelerating. The truck roared as they left the highway behind. If they were being followed, they'd find out now. But part of Jack already knew. He could feel it in his bones. He'd stepped into something too deep to back out of now. Jack pushed the rig harder than usual, the massive engine growling as it climbed a winding hill road that hadn't seen traffic in hours. Behind them, the black car's headlights remained steady, never speeding, never falling back. It was a quiet pursuit, deliberate and patient like a hunter stalking prey. Jack gritted his teeth. He wasn't built for this kind of thing. Espionage, danger, fugitives. But somehow here he was, guiding a woman through the dark while shadows crept closer with every mile. He reached for the CB radio, hesitated, then let go. Who could he trust? "Elena," he said without taking his eyes off the road. "You need to tell me everything right now." She hesitated, but then reached into her jacket. From a small inside pocket, she pulled out a USB stick wrapped in gauze and plastic. "This," she said, "this is why they're after me." Jack glanced at it, then back to the road. "What's on it?" She took a breath. "Names, bank records, surveillance footage, everything. Doctors, cops, executives. It's all there." Jack didn't speak for a long moment. The weight of her words sank like a stone in his chest. This wasn't just corruption. This was a network. He wanted to throw the stick out the window and keep driving west until the ocean stopped him. But he also saw Elena's hands trembling, not with fear, but with guilt. "I should have gone to the press right away," she whispered. "I waited, I was scared, and then Carla died." Her voice broke on the name. Jack exhaled slowly. "You were trying to do the right thing. That still counts?" He didn't know if it was true, but he needed her to believe it, because if she gave up now, they'd both be lost. He didn't realize until that moment how badly he needed her to believe. They pulled off into a truck wash yard he used to visit years ago, now abandoned. He killed the lights, shut off the engine, and let silence fill the space. "We wait," he said. "If they follow us in, we know." For 10 minutes they sat in the dark. The only sound was the ticking of the cooling engine. No car. No lights. Nothing. Just as Jack was about to start the truck again, a single headlight flickered in the distance. Not two, just one. A motorcycle. Eleanor tensed. "He's the scout," she said. Jack nodded grimly. "Then the others aren't. Far behind." Jack made a call using a burner phone he kept for emergencies. The number rang twice before a raspy voice answered. "Jack Turner," the man said, not a question. "You don't call unless it's life or death." Jack kept his voice steady. "It's both." The man on the line was Miguel Stone, an old war buddy turned independent journalist. If anyone could help, it was him. "Send me your coordinates," Miguel said. "I'll meet you halfway, but you better have proof this time." Jack looked at the USB stick in his hand. "Oh, I've got proof. Enough to bury half the county." Back. On the road, Jack turned onto a rural bypass heading toward Miguel's location. Elena sat beside him, silent, but the tension in her shoulders had shifted. She wasn't just scared anymore. She was preparing for something. "If we give this to Miguel," she said slowly, "they'll come for him too." Jack glanced at her. "He knows the risks. He's been doing this longer than we've been breathing." Elena nodded, but Jack could tell she didn't like putting more lives in danger. Neither did he. But this wasn't about safety anymore. It was about exposing the truth. Up ahead, a detour sign forced them onto an unfamiliar gravel road. Jack slowed down, instincts flaring. "This wasn't here last week," he muttered. The area was dense with trees and the gravel quickly gave way to dirt. "We're being funneled," Elena said. Jack stopped the truck and killed the lights again. "We go any further, we're boxed in." He scanned the woods. Too quiet. "They know we're carrying it," she whispered. "They're trying to trap us." Jack turned the truck around, literally and symbolically. For the first time since picking her up, he wasn't just helping her escape. He was helping her fight. As they rolled back to the main road, headlights appeared behind them. More than one set this time. Elena turned, watching the lights multiply. "What do we do now?" she asked. Jack looked straight ahead. "We don't run, we go to Miguel, we finish this." In that moment, something hardened in his face. The same man who once avoided every form of confrontation was now accelerating toward it. Not because he wasn't afraid, but because someone needed to stand up. And this time, it would be him. They reached the outskirts of the rendezvous town by dawn. The sky was an overcast gray, smeared like charcoal above tired fields and shuttered gas stations. Jack's call with Miguel had set a meeting point, an old grain silo by the edge of a train yard. As the truck pulled in, Jack's nerves tightened. The place was too quiet. He scanned the area for signs of life. No vehicles, no movement. Elena clutched the USB drive tighter. "You trust him?" she asked. Jack didn't answer immediately. "He's the only one I do." But even he wasn't sure anymore. They waited 15 minutes. Nothing. Jack stepped out cautiously, boots crunching on gravel. He circled the silo. Then he saw it. Behind a rusted fence, a car. Its door hung open, interior sprayed with shattered glass, blood on the seat. Jack's breath caught in his throat. "No," he muttered. Miguel was always careful, always paranoid. For someone to get to him, it meant this network was deeper, faster, and far more organized than Jack feared. Elena appeared behind him, saw the scene, and covered her mouth. "We're too late," she whispered, tears forming. They knew. They climbed into the truck again in silence. Jack drove aimlessly for a while, mind racing. "We don't have anyone else," Elena said. "Everyone I trusted is either dead or afraid." Her voice cracked. Jack stared forward, jaw clenched. "Then we stop trusting," he replied. "We start acting." He turned down a side road, parked the truck behind a cluster of abandoned storage units, and opened a compartment behind his seat. Inside, a dash-mounted mini-camera system and a voice recorder. "You ever record a confession?" he asked. Elena shook her head, confused. "We're gonna make them talk." Jack explained the plan with quiet precision. They'd bait the pursuers into a false sense of control, let them think they had Elena cornered. Then, during the confrontation, Jack would provoke the leader into revealing their connection to the operation. With the right angles and clean audio, they could build a story no one could ignore. "It's risky," Elena warned. Jack nodded. "So is doing nothing." His hands trembled slightly as he adjusted the dashboard cam. He wasn't a hero, but he knew a lie when he saw one, and this lie had taken too many lives. They set the trap outside a trucker diner along the interstate, somewhere public, but remote enough for confrontation. Jack parked, left the engine running, and stepped out, pretending to argue with Elena through the window. Her acting was stiff but believable. She slammed the door and stayed inside, crouched low as the camera recorded. Moments later, a black SUV pulled into the far end of the lot. Then another. The hunters had arrived. Jack watched from the diner window, waiting. One man stepped out, clean-cut, confident, gun under his jacket. Jack recognized him immediately. Lieutenant Carver, a cop, a predator. Jack exited the diner, walking calmly across the lot. "Looking for someone?" he said loudly, drawing Carver's attention. The man smiled. "Truck registered to Jack Turner, right? You're a hard man to track." Jack didn't blink. Not hard, just not worth your time, apparently. Carver chuckled, motioning to the SUV. Hand her over. You're a trucker, not a soldier. Don't get killed for someone else's mistake. Jack tilted his head. You talk a lot for someone who should be hiding. Carver stepped closer, voice dropping. You think you're smart? That drive you've got, that's nothing. Just enough to make her disappear. Disappearing women isn't new to you, is it? Jack asked, voice firm. Nurses, witnesses, whistleblowers, you silence them all. Carver flinched. Just enough. You don't know what you're talking about, he hissed. Jack pressed. Harder. I do, and now so does my dashcam. Carver's eyes flicked toward the truck, realizing too late what had been happening. He stepped back, reaching for his weapon. But Jack was faster, pulling open his jacket to reveal he was unarmed. Go ahead, Jack said. Shoot me in front of your own men, in front of that camera. Carver froze. His grip tightened, but he didn't pull. Elena stepped out slowly. We have the footage. We have names. Kill us, and it goes online. Her voice was steady. Jack looked at her in awe. She wasn't hiding anymore. Carver lowered, his hand barely, but his face twisted with venom. You'll regret this. Jack smiled. I already regret a lot, but not this. Carver backed off, muttering to his team. The SUVs retreated, tires spinning against the gravel. Jack turned to Elena. Her hands were shaking again, but her eyes burned with something new. Conviction. They had survived the storm. Now it was time to face the fallout. Jack and Elena didn't sleep that night. After the confrontation with Carver, they knew their time was running out. The footage was saved in multiple backups, one uploaded to a secure drive, another hidden inside the truck, and one mailed overnight to an independent newsroom under a false sender name. But that wasn't enough. Eleanor insisted they do one last thing, get someone from inside the ring to confess. Jack was hesitant. We already have enough, he argued. No, she said, eyes blazing. We need a face, a voice, someone they can't deny. Jack knew she was right, but the cost would be high. They chose the old way station off Route 72. It had been decommissioned years ago, left to rot under vines and rust. Jack positioned the truck just outside the building. Inside, Elena set up the camera, disguised in an old vending machine panel. They sent out a bait message from an anonymous burner phone, pretending to be a hospital staffer with evidence. Meet me, no police, no tricks, I want out. It didn't take long. 2 hours later, a response, short, cryptic. Midnight, same place. Jack and Elena exchanged a glance. This was it. At 11:45 p.m., a car approached, silver sedan, government plates. Jack stood outside in the dark, leaning against the truck. The man who stepped out was unexpected. Dr. Raymond Faulkner, hospital administrator. Clean-cut, fatherly, charismatic. Jack stiffened. Eleanor's breath caught in her throat as she watched from the shadows. You're not staff, Faulkner said coldly. Where's the nurse? Jack didn't blink. She's done hiding and you're done pretending, Faulkner smirked. You have no idea what you're involved in. Jack stepped closer. I know enough. Enough to make you talk. Faulkner's face tightened. Let me guess. Recording devices? Cameras? A desperate little play before you disappear? Jack didn't respond, but Elena appeared behind him, recorder in hand. Say my name, she said. Say what you did. Faulkner hesitated. You shouldn't be alive, he muttered. You were supposed to vanish with the others. Jack moved between them. That's your confession, he said. And it's already been sent. Faulkner panicked. You don't understand what you've started. But Elena was already pressing send on her phone. The files had gone to 6 journalists, 2 advocacy groups and 1 contact in the FBI. A noise cracked behind them. Another car. Elena turned. A figure stepped out, gun raised. Jack dove, tackling her to the ground, just as a shot rang out, grazing the side of the truck. Faulkner ran for his car. Jack pulled Elena behind the trailer, heart racing. I didn't expect backup, he hissed. We should have. Another shot shattered the back window. Jack pulled his old hunting rifle from a locked crate, loaded fast. "Cover me," he whispered. Elena nodded, her hands steady now. The woman who once flinched at sirens now crouched beside him, ready to stand her ground. Jack fired a warning shot. The man ducked behind a tree. Silence followed. A long, tense pause. Then headlights. A convoy of vehicles approached from the other direction. Local sheriff units. Flashing lights. Sirens. Jack froze. "You called them?" Elena shook her head. "No." The lead car stopped. Out stepped a female officer, Deputy Marshal Teresa Harlan. "Jack Turner," she called out. He nodded. "You've got something. I need to see." Jack hesitated. Elena handed over a phone with the files. "It's all here, names, dates, confessions." Harlan studied it, then turned to her team. "Secure the area and arrest Dr. Faulkner." The shooter was captured, without resistance. Faulkner screamed, demanded his rights, but no one listened. The truth was louder now. Jack and Elena stood by the truck as the scene unfolded, blue and red lights painting their faces, their story finally seen. Harlan approached. "This footage will change things," she said. "You may have just cracked open something national." Jack sighed, exhausted. "We didn't do it for attention." Elena added, "We did it because no one else would." Harlan nodded. "Sometimes that's all it takes." For the first time in days, Jack let himself believe it might actually be over. As dawn broke, they sat together on the back bumper, watching officials pack evidence into boxes. Jack looked at Elena. "So, where now?" She smiled softly. "Somewhere I don't have to hide." Jack nodded. "Mind if I drive?" She laughed. "Only if we stop for breakfast first." Jack stood, stretched his sore back and looked down the road. It stretched long and empty, like always, but this time it didn't feel lonely. It felt earned. He'd turned his truck around, but more than that, he'd turned his life around, and the road ahead finally had meaning again. The morning. Sun cast long shadows over the quiet highway as Jack and Elena sat side by side in the cab of the truck, their faces lit by the soft glow of a new day. The nightmare they had lived through was far from over. There would be court dates, threats, and whispers in the dark. But for now, justice had a foothold. Elena was enrolled in the Federal Witness Protection Program, her safety secured for the first time in months. Jack, for the first time since his wife's passing, felt a spark of purpose ignite within his chest. This road was no longer an escape route. It was a path to redemption. Jack looked out at the horizon, breathing in the crisp morning air. The me. Miles ahead stretched endlessly, but they no longer felt like a burden. He was no longer running from ghosts or drowning in grief. Instead, every mile was a promise of healing, of courage, of standing for what mattered. Elena's story had awakened something in him he thought was lost forever. Hope. And with that hope came strength to face whatever came next. He turned the ignition, the engine humming steady and sure beneath them. Elena reached over, gripping Jack's hand gently. "Thank you," she said softly, voice trembling with relief and gratitude. "For saving me, for believing me." Jack squeezed back, his eyes meeting hers in a silent vow. "You saved me, too." The irony wasn't lost on either of them. Two broken souls, strangers a few days ago, now bound by an unbreakable bond. Forged in fear and fire. Together they would face whatever came next. Together they were no longer alone. As the truck rolled back onto the highway, Jack felt the weight of years lift from his shoulders. The road had been his refuge, but it was also his teacher. It had shown him that running wasn't always the answer. Sometimes you had to turn around, face your fears, fight for others, and reclaim your life. The steering wheel was steady beneath his hands, and with every turn he felt more certain. This was no longer just a job or a way to forget. It was a mission, a calling. They stopped at a small diner just off the highway, the neon sign flickering warmly in the early light. Inside, the smell of coffee and bacon wrapped around them like a comforting embrace. As they sat together, laughing quietly over simple breakfast food, Jack realized something profound. Purpose wasn't found in solitude or escape. It was found in connection, in courage, in fighting for justice, even when the odds were stacked against you. And maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of a new journey. News of the exposé had spread quickly. The corrupt network began unraveling as officials launched investigations, arrests followed, and stories of bravery echoed through the community. Jack and Elena watched from afar, cautious but hopeful. They knew the road ahead would still be rough, filled with challenges and shadows, but they also knew that together, with truth as their weapon and hope as their shield, they could face whatever darkness lay ahead. As they prepared to leave the diner, Jack looked at Elena and smiled. "Ready to hit the road again?" he asked. She nodded, determination shining in her eyes. "This time," she said, "we drive forward." The truck rumbled to life, tires gripping the pavement as they pulled back onto the highway. The sun climbed higher, casting golden light over the endless stretch ahead. The future was uncertain, but for the first time it was theirs to claim. Before they disappeared down the highway, Jack took a moment to speak directly to those who might hear their story. If you're out there feeling lost or broken, remember this. Sometimes the hardest roads lead to the most meaningful destinations. Don't be afraid to turn around. Don't be afraid to stand up. And never lose hope. Elena added softly, "We survived the storm. Now it's your turn to find your way." If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe for more gripping tales that remind us of the power of courage and hope. Like and comment to share your thoughts. Your support helps us bring more stories like this to life. Become a channel member to join our community and get exclusive content. More inspiring stories are on the way. Don't miss our next thrilling revelation.